Hi everybody, welcome to explanation video to explain to you guys how to do the paper, which I'm sure you've been waiting for all semester. When can we do this paper? But actually, I think you guys will enjoy at least parts of it. It's not too bad. And so let me explain how to do this to you guys. Do this for you and help you guys get going on this. So here in modules, click on critical analysis paper to do May 18. You'll need all three of your books. So there's one of them. And the other one. And the last one. There you go. All right. So you need your three books for this. So when you guys open this page up, it'll mention you need these books, obviously. And hold on, give me a second here. There we go. The first thing you guys want to do is a quick click on the critical analysis paper link right here. So let me do that for you guys. And it'll open up at some point. Oh, I hope you guys are all doing good. I know it's been a busy semester for you guys, so I hope it's going to finish well. We're close to the end, and this paper will kind of be the capstone for our class. Maybe it'll open up quicker for you guys. I think I'll get a drink while I'm waiting. If you're wondering what I'm drinking, not that it's important, I happen to be these chai vanilla tea. I'd recommend that. There you go. I don't get any commission for this, by the way, but and I drink quite a bit of green tea. My time in South Korea, I really got into drinking green tea. This happens to be with pomegranate, but I don't really care. Although I do like it with pomegranate. But any version's fine. I really enjoy my time in South Korea. It's a life-changing experience for me. And one of them is growing to really enjoy green tea, which is something that prior to working in South Korea, I don't think I'd ever had green tea. I just say that. I don't think so. I'd had tea in Chinese restaurants, and I had sweet tea or iced tea. But in any case, let's get back to the topic at hand. If you guys see me drinking, you wonder like what I'm up to. Yes, I'm drinking my chai vanilla, which is really good. Okay, so here's the paper. And let me make that a little bigger for you guys. There you go. So your paper will be essentially 4 pages. Now, if you need it, you can go up to 6. And some of you may be better with 6, but 4 is the minimum. You don't need to go beyond 4. 4 is what is required. But if you need to, you can go a little bit longer. By the way, if you need more than 6, that's fine, but please don't go more than like 7. I have to grade all these. So I'm sure your paper will be wonderful, Shakespearean and in tone and great, but 4 pages is what is required. 5 is fine. 6 is great too. And it's based on those books, as you guys already know. The style of the paper is Chicago. That's what historians use. But to help you guys, Chicago is very similar to MLA. I'm not being too worried about that in this paper, but in case you're wondering, historians do use what's called Chicago style, but again, it's quite similar to MLA. Font should be New Times Roman, and font size should be 10 to 12. Naturally, you guys will choose 12, and I'm completely fine with that. Now, if you want to squeeze a little bit more on your paper, you could go down to 11 or even 10, although 10 is getting kind of small, but any of those are fine. But the standard is 12, so 12 is completely fine. But some of you, I know you have a little more to say, and that's fine. I respect that. That's me too. So if you need to, you want to squeeze it down a little bit, put down to 11, that's fine, even 10. Just make sure you leave double space. Keep the margins standard. Just don't, by the way, usually in Word, they're fine. They're ready to go. Just don't change that. Leave that. And you guys make sure, by the way, you'll put a cover page on this, and you'll put a bibliography or works cited. Usually use word bibliography, but works cited is fine too. And you'll use what's called both paraphrase citation and direct quotes. And let me very briefly describe what paraphrase citation is. Paraphrase citation is you, the author of your paper, you mention something very specific from your author. For example, maybe you're referring to Klein H. Mart or Nguyen's A Sympathizer, and you're referring to a very specific episode. When you refer to something very specifically, even if you don't quote it, but it's very specific, and the way you often know that is the book will actually be open, you're like, I got to use this example. It's really will illustrate what I'm getting at. It's a very specific example. Now, you didn't quote it here, but you mentioned a very specific example. When you do that at the end of the sentence where you describe that specific episode or thing from the book, at the end of that sentence, you'll simply put parentheses, page number parentheses. Now, again, you don't use quotation marks because you do not actually quote it word for word. But you mentioned a very specific episode or moment from that book. And again, you're giving the author specific credit. Also allows the reader, in this case me, to fact check you. Sometimes you guys will see something I really didn't notice, even though I read these books myself, of course, too. But I want to interesting, that's an interesting point she just brought up. I want to go look at that and read the context of that. And so at the end of your specific mention of that episode or whatever it was, your page number is helpful because it means the reader myself can go and fact check that or look at, not even just fact check it. I want to go and look at the context of that and say, I want to look at that a little bit. And your citation at the end of your sentence where you describe that specific episode allows me to do that. But clearly, obviously, you guys will also be quoting directly. So when you're quoting directly, you'll do nearly the same thing. So obviously, you'll use quotation marks around your direct quote, of course, and you'll follow it up with put the author's name there and the page number in parentheses. So you have both of these. Actually, you know what? You should also have that here too, put the author's name there. But anyways, I'm not sure about that right now. In any case, put the author's name, comma, page number in parentheses at the end of either your paraphrase citation or obviously at the end of your direct quote. And you'll want to make sure you're using both of these. So in the typical page you guys are doing, I'll look for probably 2 or 3 paraphrase citations, because again, you're bringing very specific aspects of your author's thought to the page. And then also you probably have 2 or 3 direct quotes. By the way, keep your quote short. I know I mentioned with each question, quote, and absolutely you must do that. But don't do like a big block quote. Keep the quote short. 1 sentence, 2 sentences, but keep them fairly short because we don't have room in this fairly short paper for a long quote. But make sure you are quoting, but just keep them brief. All right, and finally, answer these questions according to required readings. Of course, naturally, you're doing that because that's what we're studying. Be specific. Now, I mentioned be specific like 4 times in the next 3 sentences. Again, because I don't want some vague statement. Now, you can make a general introductory statement, but follow that with a very specific piece of evidence to explain your point you're illustrating. Make sure, you see relating thought or quote, be sure to carefully identify the source. Obviously, in this case, this would be, for example, would be Nguyen or Zahner or Lee, depending on which one of these books you're using. And always be specific. Bring your evidence to the table. Think of yourself as a lawyer in court, and you're presenting very specific evidence. Here is why my client is innocent, because of this fact, this fact, this fact, this evidence, this evidence. Or maybe a prosecutor, he's guilty for the exact same reason because of this piece of evidence, specific evidence, not just some general thing like he looks shifty, he looks like he's a criminal. No. I want to know precisely what is your evidence you're bringing to the table in your argument. Okay, good. Okay, so let's get down. That was just kind of the background of the paper. Let's get down to the meat and bones here of the paper itself. Now, this paper is not like the typical paper you probably do in your typical class. This paper will actually be 4 independent 1-page essays. So instead of you're following like a common theme and you're taking that common theme all the way through the paper, that's not what you're doing here. Instead, you're making 4 basically 1-page individual stand-alone essays. Does that make sense? So once you finish that first prompt, or for that first essay, it would take you a page. Once you're done with it, you're completely done. You don't have to like blend that topic into the next one. So just think of this as 4 1-page essays, essentially, or responses to the prompts. So there's no introductory paragraph in this, and then you're kind of weaving, following some theme all the way to the end of the paragraph, and you have some final paragraph for the summation of the topic. That's not what we're doing. Instead, it's 4 completely independent basically one-page responses from you based on specific prompts. So let's get to that first one. So the first one says, Viet Nguyen's narrator or protagonist and the sympathizer, who is biracial, often find, well, I need to type, it's a typo, but often finds himself caught up, not fitting comfortably into America or Vietnam, despite his ability to operate successfully in many ways in both countries. In both countries, some have a hard time seeing the narrator's full humanity due to their perceptions of race, ethnicity, culture, history, group ideological conformity or purity, family of origin, etc. Give a specific example of the struggles to fit in America, and also a specific example of the same struggle in Vietnam. Make sure to quote directly from both examples you choose, and give a detailed explanation of what examples you choose to reveal about perception and misperception of others, and the cost of such misjudgments. Okay, so it'll take you a page to do that. I break that into two parts. The first one is how in the United States people have a hard time, actually some, because we're a very diverse nation, but how some Americans have a hard time seeing his full humanity based on he's Asian, he comes from a refugee population, he's Vietnamese, and they're not able, because of that superficial identity, that colors how they perceive and they miss the reality of the person beneath that. So let's get specific. So for example, maybe you would mention the auteur or the film producer on the movie Hamlet. As you guys know, he has a very tense dialogue with him over representation of Vietnamese in his movie he's making, and the auteur not really, well, very condescendingly to explain to him, like, do you make movies? Do you know what you're doing? That might be a good example of Nguyen's character, the narrator feeling he's dismissed, he's not understood, and his point of view being Vietnamese is dismissed because you're almost a prop in for a typical mainstream American story where the Americans in the story, they're the protagonists. The Vietnamese are simply the stage setting behind it, and how that conversation is not really an open dialogue of the auteur or the producer talking to the narrator. So, okay, so if that's what you want to choose, a good example. There's other ones in the book, of course, right? So be specific. Make sure you get in that conversation. I'd reread that whole conversation between the two of them and find a quote or two, keep them short, that specifically address how the narrator feels dismissed or not seen or not heard, or his lived experience as a Vietnamese person is not really resonating with the auteur, because the auteur is busy making, as he sees, a typical kind of red, white, and blue American action movie that happens to be set in Vietnam, but that's not really the point, right? So explain that, and also explain how this misjudgment has a cost to it, right? Because again, you don't see the full humanity of, and again, in the case of the producer, the full humanity of the subjects. Now, by the way, it's fine for the narrator, of course, to focus on the American soldier's perspective. That's fine, right? I don't think, you can choose your subjectives, that's fine. So that's not the problem. But the problem that he seems, for the most part, uninterested in making the Vietnamese, secondary character, supporting cast, to have any complexity outside of fulfilling almost like a cartoonishly simple role in the background. So you can chew on that, explain. Obviously, there is a loss to that. For example, the narrator being nearly killed in the explosion, which, by the way, he does not know whether that was intentional or not, right? And even the settlement's pretty, Any case. Now, that would be the first part, right? So in the second part of your page, you're jumping to Vietnam, right? So his time in Vietnam. Both maybe at the very start of the book, maybe they call him a bastard, and there's other officers talking to him because he's biracial. Or at the very end of the book, when he's dealing with the commandant and the commissar and all that, dig into, again, they have a hard time seeing him. In this case, it's partially because he's biracial, but also because they view him as no longer ideologically correct because he lived in America too long and he didn't save the agent the way they thought it. So maybe he's a communist, but maybe he's a little bit too independent as a communist. So he's not really one of us. So again, they dig into that, quote from that. So again, all total will take you about a page to do that. You see right here, it says 1+. That means if you need more than a page, maybe a page and a half, that's fine. Just be thoughtful, lay out your thought as you're answering these things, and then you'll be done with that one. All right, then you move on to number 2. So in your paper, you actually put number 1. Now, do not write this question out. That wastes a ton of space. But I do want you actually to write number 1. And then you have your paragraphs and go away. You maybe starts on page 2, and then double space and just put number 2. And then you'll jump in with this next one. Again, and you don't have to connect these all, right? There's no connection. Once you finished 1, that piece on Nguyen Sympathizer, done. That's it. Done. Okay. So 2, completely different chapter of your paper. You don't have to connect. There's no connection there. So number 2 says Michelle Zauner in Crying H Mart often found or finds Korean food to be a way to connect with her mom and her mom's culture identity as her mom battled cancer, and as a way to process her grief after her mom's death, and Zauner's ongoing developing sense of self. So that's a big theme in her book, as you guys know well. She mentions a ton of food in here. Again, like I mentioned in her earlier video, if you haven't been Googling the English term she's using to refer to Korean food, do some of that, right? But you guys know I'm very biased. I love Korean food. My wife is Korean, so there's a lot of fabulous food out there. I encourage you guys, if you've never tried some of it, you got to try it. There's a lot of really wonderful stuff. You can ask me for recommendations. In any case. So, backing up here. So that's kind of her cultural connection, kind of a love language within her family is food, right? So, all right. Number 1 says, provide a specific example of Zauner's connection to her mom or mom's culture through food. Make sure to quote directly and explain the context and significance of the episode you chose. And by the way, that is almost every chapter here, so you don't have to look too long to find that. But someplace where she feels, I'll give you an example. Like after her mom's death, right? She makes kimchi, which I don't think she mentioned she had ever done before. She went online to YouTube, which is a great way to, saw people talking about it. She's like, I got to try this, right? And it's therapeutic for her, right? As a connection with her mom. And so dig into that a little bit. Quote specifically from that, or any episode you choose, frankly. There's a lot of good examples, right? But choose one quote from it briefly. Be specific. Describe what that does for her. Lay that out. And then, number 2, give a specific example of a way you personally connect with some aspect of your family's culture. Now, this is a fun one. I'm looking forward to reading this. This is when you say, for you, what is the way you connect with your family? By the way, you guys could come from blending families as well, or maybe not. But what is the way you connect with your family's culture? But it does not need to be food. Now, food is true for a lot of us, right? We love to eat. So food is a great one, but it doesn't have to be food, right? It could be any way. It could be food or activities, things your family does, your culture, your family outlook, religion. There's many, many ways. Cultural things you guys do, but ways that you connect with your family that are meaningful to you. So lay that out, and how that influences and informs your sense of self. So, all right. I'm looking forward to reading that one, so that should be good. So that's number 2. Again, that'll take you a page to answer both the first part of that on Zauner's, her connection to her mom through food, and you laying out the specifics in that. And then based on what is your connection within your own family. And again, it'll take you a page or so to do that, maybe a little bit more. But, all right. Then number 3, based on the Cicero quote, to be ignorant of what occurred before you were born is to remain always a child. Now, as a historian, I love that quote because it's profoundly true. That's why I love it so much. It's because it's true. Cicero, the great Roman politician, thinker, statesman, intellectual, is laying down a universal truth, which is if we don't understand the backstory or history, you can't understand what's going on in our contemporary world. It's just a mystery. You guys know on a personal level, you need to know people's backstory, who you're in business with or dating, even your parents, right, or grandparents. It's very helpful to hear their backstory to understand where they're coming from. You look at your mom or dad or grandparents, and like, why are they white? Why are they this way? Both, it can be good and bad, right? But why are they this way? Well, go into the backstory. I bet you the backstory will be very helpful. Like, okay, that makes more sense to me, like why that is. In any case, so Cicero's laying out this universal truth. So based on that, provide 3 specific examples of how your personal awareness has been expanded or changed from something you've encountered in Nguyen Sympathizer, or, actually, I need to put or in all these. I will do that. Or Zauner's Crying H Mart, or Lee's Making an Asian America, or any of their sources. So you don't have to do all of these, right? I want you to choose 3 of these. I prefer them from 3 different sources. So, for example, maybe you choose one of these from a New England Sympathizer, one of these from Erica Lee's The Making Asian American, maybe one from a movie you chose. It's totally up to you. But I want to choose 3 specific things that, again, expanded your awareness or changed how you perceive things based on the videos we watch, obviously the books too. Just be specific. So the way I do this, I break it into 3 paragraphs. So maybe you mentioned something from Michelle Zauner's book, like I did not know this, and okay, great, be specific, quote from her, and that's maybe number 1 from you. Second paragraph, maybe a movie you watched. Maybe you watched a Charlie Chan investigation. You're like, on the one hand, the Charlie Chan had some cringe-worthy, besides the yellow face, obviously, has some cringe-worthy moments. But on the other hand, the story was pretty good, and I could see how it's kind of complicated. I could see how, on the one hand, there's some very negative aspects to the Charlie Chan series. But on the other hand, he's also the hero. And in that time period, to have an, quote, Asian hero is unusual, and he's the smart guy in the room. And it was funny that I was into it. It's very enjoyable, and so it's more nuanced than I thought it would be when I first started watching. I was like, yikes. I don't know. It's totally up to you, right? So you're going to have 3 of these. So I prefer 3 different sources. Again, you could just do 3 books. You could do The Wind Sympathizer, Erica Lee's Making Asian America, or Zauner's Crime H Mart. But maybe you could do one of those books, and then you could choose maybe one movie, and then the second movie you watch. Just be specific, quote, and describe specifically what it was that you found fascinating or informing or thought-provoking or shaping of your thought based on what you came across in this class. This kind of wide open one. I hope you guys enjoy this one. I'm looking forward to reading this one too, because again, I'm really looking forward to see your guys' perceptions, things you found, things you discovered, and it is wide open, right? So it's just 3 examples of things that struck you, grabbed you. Could be even something you disagree with. That's fine, right? Just something that grabbed you and like, interesting. Now, maybe I disagree with this, but here's why this is interesting, and here's a thought about this. Or maybe you think, I never thought about it this way before, but now that I read this, that's helpful, and that gave me a broader perspective. Here's what I found there that I've not thought of before. Perfect. What is that thing? Okay, and finally, let's get to number 4. Again, once you finish 3, complete, totally done. So you don't have to try to blend that into questions 1 and 2. No. It's a completely standalone. Once you finish your 3 examples, you're completely done again. That'll take you about a page or so. All right, we're moving right along. So we're up to number 4. Okay, your last was prompt. Using Lee's The Making of Asian America, select one specific ethnic community from within the Asian American community. For example, Chinese American, Japanese American, Indian American, Filipino American, Korean American, Hmong American, Thai American, any of the groups, right? And then you're going to do 3 things with this group you selected. And again, you can self-select whatever group kind of grabs you. Chinese American, any of these, doesn't matter, right? The first thing you want to do is track their reason or reasons and waves of immigration to the United States. And why that was. Why did they come here? And again, oftentimes these communities themselves are diverse, both over time. So the original reason may not be the reason they had later on, right? So, like, for example, you talk about the Chinese, usually they came for economic reasons, right? But at different points, there could be other reasons as well, too, right? So, or the Korean community or Japanese American, whichever, right? So, in the first part of the answer, it'll take you about a paragraph to do this. Lay out the kind of maybe the waves of immigration and the reasons behind those waves of immigration for the coming to the United States. You see economic war, refugee, for example, the wind came because of war, right? Freedom, getting away from a system that did not allow you to express who you were and in safety. And finally, last one, love. Love would be, marriage. Could be marriage or family, right? Now, in case maybe that's why my wife is here in the United States. She didn't come for economic reasons, or she was not a war refugee or any of the rest of them. She came because, wisely or not, she loved me. So, so that's why we're here. So what are the reasons, right? So lay those out. And again, they'll vary from community to community. So if you're talking about the Vietnamese community, that's going to be a very specific kind of story, like why that is. If you're talking about the Indian community, there's going to be diversity of what reasons why they came, even waves and what that be. So that'd be your first one. Oh, by the way, before I go any farther, let me help you, because when you start reading this, you're like, but I don't really know, because, there's large portions of this that we have not done the assigned reading. And you are correct at that. But don't worry, I got you. So the way to do this is go to the back of the book, go to the index, go all the way back to the index, choose the Asian American community you want to focus on, right? Whatever that community may be, Hmong Americans or whatever that community may be, right? Go to the index and look up that community. And then the page numbers there will take you directly to that community throughout their experience in America. So you're not trying to wade through these chapters. No, let the index take you directly and specifically to what you're going to be looking for and referencing. So make it much easier. So you can track that community closely without having am I going to try to wade through this and find them? No, you don't. Be smart. Index, right? Go to the index, find that community, and that'll take you directly just these pages as you're working with it. And that's how you'll answer number 4. All right. So once you finish one, talking about the reasons for immigration to the United States and the waves, number 2 says, then describe 2 of the biggest challenges faced by this community and experience in America. Now, by the way, it'd be more than 2, but just lay those out. And again, you can self-select who you want to get into. If you're talking about the Chinese in America, for example, maybe you talk about the early Chinese Exclusion Act. Okay, great. You can look it up in index, Chinese Exclusion Act. Read about that a little bit. Perfect. So I'll mention that one. Now maybe I'll mention perception of Chinese being foreign, the unassimilable, carry disease. Maybe you talk about the early anti-Chinese emphasis. Okay, great. Or you could choose about one of the more recent pressure the Chinese community has been under an era of COVID and all that's going on, right? So in any case, that's really up to you. Just choose 2 of the big challenges they face, the community of choice that you've chosen. Again, use the index. It'll be very helpful to that. You can take you right to challenges they face. I picked 2 of them. Make sure you quote and be specific. So quote from Lee, again, brief quotes from her, describing challenges faced by the community, explain those. And finally, because you've done number 1 and 2, finally, number 3, finally discuss the community's greatest accomplishments and successes in their experience in America. Let me get this out of the way. Make sure to quote Lee directly. Again, there's a reason why people come to the United States, right? They do feel some hope here. There's challenges, of course, but also there's, because of their hard work, in some ways, openness to the American system. Although, despite the challenges we just talked about, number 2, right? But America's complex, right? There's a reason why people come from all over the world to come here, right? So what is it in the American environment that has worked well for them? Allow them to thrive. So give me a couple examples. Give me some examples of how they have thrived, despite the reality of the challenges we just talked about in number 2. Some of which could be ongoing, right? So we're not saying this naively. We're saying it's a complicated picture. That there's American society in many ways can be quite open in a way, despite obviously some significant challenges that have varied over time. So in 3, you're talking about, so what are the greatest accomplishments successes in America? Again, use the index. Again, that'll take you about a page to do that. By the way, if you want to, you could also, for that last one, number 3, you could also use the internet, of course, too. The more contemporary, if you want to do a little bit of research, you could Google your Asian community of choice and see prominent members within that community, see individual successes. I talked about this a little bit at the start of the semester, right? When I was just laying out our very first lecture, and even in the syllabus, right? In the syllabus talking about the profound contributions the Asian American communities made in the United States. So when you're doing number 3, maybe you want to Google that one. Prominent Filipino Americans. There you go. All right. Contributing to arts, sciences, medicine, etc. Prominent Korean Americans, prominent Hmong Americans, right? And that could be helpful. So you might want to Google that one. Use Lee, of course. You can be using Lee. But you also might want to Google for a little bit extra help with that. So all total will take you a page or so to complete those 3 parts to question number 4. After that, you'll put a bibliography on there where you'll cite all your works, and you can use, by the way, use my sample. Yeah, I will attach the sample paper to see how to cite. Again, citation is very similar to MLA. And again, it is technically Chicago style, but it is very similar to LA. So click, after you watch this video, click on the sample paper. Now, sample paper is not from our class. It's from one of my other history classes. But the cover page will be useful to you guys, and also bibliography at the end of that sample will also be very helpful to you guys. So what does bibliography look like, and how do you cite? And you'll see that there in the sample, which you guys can click on. All right, and if you guys use any outside sources, obviously besides these 3 books, of course, you guys will have bibliography. If you use it in the internet, just put those internet citation in there as well too. All total, that'll be 150 points for this. So each one of these is worth 35 points, and your cover page is worth 5 points, and also your bibliography. And the whole paper adds up to 150 points. It's a big chunk of your grade. It'd be very helpful to your grades, kind of the capstone of your learning this semester, and I'm looking forward to grading these. Although I'll need a lot of this to help me do that, and probably some stronger caffeinated beverages. But do a good job. You guys have encountered a lot of rich material this semester. A strong understanding of America, and you get to reflect upon that, chew on that, process that, and construct an argument where you lay out your encounter with Nguyen and Lee and Zahner and other sources in our class. And I'm looking forward to grading these papers. It's a lot of work. I don't want to lie about that. But I'm curious. I'm really curious what you guys find, and what you guys have been chewing on, processing, thinking about, and your perceptions of this experience, the Asian American experience. So with that, I think that's it. So hopefully this video is helpful to you guys, get you guys up and running for your paper. And we're at the end. So take care, everybody.